Hello Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we'll be discussing the Toronto Raptors' victory against the Philadelphia 76ers. But before we do that, I want to break down what I have seen this year from Raptors coach Darko Rajakovic. And we're going to be looking at four things. The first of which is the offense, second, defense, third, the development of the players on the team, and fourth, the morale of the team, because I think that's a pretty important thing to look at as a coach. You want to see how their interactions with the team help foster the right environment for learning, getting better, and especially at this stage, being able to be on the same page and learning to play as a team. And why don't we start with that one? We'll start with morale. So a 23-43 team is, that's not a good mark. Way more losses than wins. This team is pretty deep in the hole. Then in that kind of environment, we've seen it before, a lot of players start playing for themselves. The vibes are horrible. Many of the players are just sort of, mailing it in, not executing on offense, not trying hard on defense. And I'll say that isn't really a problem with this team. The vibes of the team seem very good. The players are executing the offensive scheme to the best of their abilities, and they're playing relatively hard on defense. So very good job from Darko in this particular category. You see it all the time, like on bad teams, a lot of players start giving, cryptic interviews where they maybe hint at the dysfunction that's happening in the locker room. Maybe they're complaining about their roles and whatnot. And you really haven't seen that this year. And when you see and you look at the sidelines, Darko is always being chipper. He's always getting up and explaining things to the players and giving them tips. And it always looks as if the players are locked in and listening to what he's saying, and that his words are not falling on deaf ears. So that's encouraging. And he really does have a positive demeanor and always seems to have some constructive criticism or constructive advice for his team, and they do seem willing to listen. I would say that in terms of morale, at this rebuilding stage, he gets an A+ there. It's very hard to see many other coaches being able to keep his team in high spirits. I mean, we saw it with Nick Nurse. The team's vibes were in the gutter, and that doesn't seem to be the case with Darko. So high marks there. Next up, we're going to go to the offense, and I'm going to say that I think that the offensive system looks good. I mean, I am watching them run the plays, and things are moving, and players are cutting with a purpose, and unfortunately, they are not very efficient, and they turn the ball over too much. You look with your eyes and you see one thing, it looks okay, and then you look at the stat sheet and you look at the results, and the results are not good. So the Toronto Raptors are 26th in the league in offensive rating. That is not good. They do not generate enough three-point shots. They are 29th in the league in three-point attempts, and they are 23rd in percentage. A lot of this is due to the personnel. First of all, Scotty Barnes is one of the top players on the team in terms of time of possession, number of touches, and shot attempts, and he is not a good three-point shooter, and he also doesn't take a lot of threes, which, that's a good thing. If you're not a good three-point shooter, you don't want to be taking a ton of threes, but that's one of the reasons they are near dead last in three-point attempts. And also, Jakob Poeltl, probably the second best player on the team this season, and he does get a high number of touches and a number of attempts, and he pretty much takes 0 three-point shots. So that's a big reason. And another thing is that there are not a lot of players on the team who can generate their own three-point shot. Emmanuel Quickley is really the only guy who can do that. Even RJ, who takes a bunch of threes, is a spot-up shooter. So, the personnel does not really lend itself to having a ton of three-point attempts. Another thing is because the Toronto Raptors are a transition-focused team. They take the 5th most transition attempts in the entire league, and unfortunately, they are 3rd from the bottom in terms of efficiency on transition. There are 3 main culprits there. RJ, actually Scotty is not a very good finisher in transition, and especially Grady. Grady gets a lot of transition attempts and is one of the worst in the league at converting them, but RJ is a issue there. Scotty is an issue there. There are a lot of players that are below average transition players. I think a lot of this is also trying to force transition and semi-transition. I don't think that they have a ton of confidence in their half-court offense. So a lot of the time they will throw a long distance pass to try and force a transition bucket. They're really trying to force transition buckets, and it's not really working. So maybe that is something that the Toronto Raptors next season can pull back on, scale back on. If you're trying to force transition baskets and you're not very efficient there, maybe that's something you should cut back on. The problem is that in the half court, they are pretty much below average in almost every single play type. Cuts, off screens, spot up, pick and roll ball handler. The only one really where they're above average in terms of efficiency and also in terms of they run the play a decent amount is the pick and roll man. So that is when you run a pick and roll and then you give the ball to the roll man. And that really just speaks volumes to Jakob Poeltl being a very good pick and roll man, but also Scottie Barnes, as the season has progressed, has become more in that role and has run more plays where he finishes plays as the roll man. So I think that they should be focusing on that next year, maybe with Scottie making him more of a screen setter. The Raptors really do get a ton of points in the paint. They are second in the league in terms of points in the paint. So they score a lot of points there, but they're not very efficient there. There's, a number of reasons for that. A lot of the guards on the Raptors aren't very good finishers inside. Grady Dick, Emmanuel Quickley, neither of those guys are particularly good at finishing in the paint. But again, also in transition, that's where a lot of teams are very efficient and the Raptors are not. So they definitely have to get better there. That should be a point of emphasis for next season. And I think the biggest criticism of Darko's offense is the next point, which is that they turn the ball over too much. They are 7th from the bottom in terms of the number of turnovers that they commit per game. And this makes sense. This is going to be a flaw for any motion offense, for any offense that is reliant on a lot of movement and a lot of passing. You're going to turn the ball over more. The Raptors are literally at the bottom of the league in terms of isolation plays. They do not isolate at all. And so that is one of the lowest turnover type plays, and they do not run that type of play. There are a lot of plays in this offense that rely on skip passes, that rely on high degree of difficulty passes where they're trying to manufacture a bucket. And as I've mentioned in the past, that just, lends itself to turning the ball over more. There are usually a lot of defenders between yourself and the player you're passing the ball to. So that just, you're going to turn the ball over more often. And I don't know if this is something that can be remedied in the Toronto Raptors offense from a scheme perspective. I think that if you're running this type of scheme, this is just going to be something that happens. It really just comes down to the players. They have to be better passers and they have to make smarter reads. And if they can do that, then they'll turn the ball over less. But I think it's always going to be an issue. Maybe not the issue if they get good enough, but it will be an issue. In general, I would say that for whatever reason, I know the stats don't really back me up here, but when I watch the offense, it looks pretty good. Everybody is getting an opportunity. I think that there are tweaks that need to be made, but I think that I could foresee this offense being good in the future where more complementary players can be added in order to make the offense pop. So more shooting is definitely needed here. More shot creation, especially on the perimeter shot creation, is definitely needed here. And more quickly next season is going to help. And also, I think adding in a guy who has the perimeter chops, like a Brandon Ingram, is going to help there too. Especially if he shoots more threes. We'll see. Next up, let's look at the defense. The Toronto Raptors actually have fielded a pretty good defense when Scottie and Jakob Poeltl are on the floor together. I think that they complement each other very well. And then if you add into that some competent defenders on the wing and at the guard, I think that this team can be a good and probably will be a pretty good defensive team moving forward, especially if you have a guy like maybe Jacoby Walter continuing to move up in terms of the pecking order. And when you look at the lineup data, it suggests that Jacoby Walter is one of the most impactful defenders on the Toronto Raptors. So being able to see him play more often, more with Scottie, more with Poeltl, Quickley has actually been pretty good defensively as well. He's not very disruptive, but he's able to navigate screens and stay in front of guys. I think he can be part of a competent NBA defense. The scheme in terms of what's happening on the floor is okay. So they force turnovers at a decent rate. They don't allow too many threes, and their opponents are not that efficient from either in the paint, from 2-point range or from 3-point range. They're good at protecting the basket, and they don't give up a ton of threes, and they don't allow teams to shoot a high percentage from three. So pretty good there. Unfortunately, here's the big issue. They are dead last in opponent free throw attempts per game. They foul way too much. And I think that part of this is a youth issue, so that the Raptors are very young and they are playing a very aggressive defensive scheme where they try and force turnovers. They try and use their hands to force turnovers, but they have some suspect perimeter defenders right now. The two guys that I'm talking about, Grady Dick and RJ Barrett, are not good defenders, and they are the guys that show up quite a bit when it comes to the lineup data suggests that they are just, part of many different lineups that are not good defensively. I just think that the scheme, maybe it's either too aggressive or they just don't have the personnel to execute it. So I could see the Toronto Raptors sticking with this scheme, but I think that they should be giving more minutes to players who are better able to execute it. For example, Jacoby Walter, when Davion Mitchell was on the team, he was very good at getting up into players. Jamal Shead is pretty good at that as well. So I think it's about either personnel or scheme. Either they have to dial back the aggressiveness or they need to give Darko better tools in order to implement it. And another thing is that they switch a lot. They are a very, very switch-happy team. And I think that this limits the amount of, quality shot opportunities that other teams get. It doesn't allow them to get much separation in the pick and roll. But one of the issues is that you're allowing the other team to get a favorable matchup. And a lot of the time that will result in free throws. The switches would work better if they had better defensive personnel. So there you go. That's homework maybe for the front office, or Darko has to change his scheme to switch a little less, but that opens up a whole other can of worms. So I think that the defensive scheme is okay, but the personnel maybe isn't there yet. But the stats say right now that the Toronto Raptors are a better defensive team than an offensive team, so you have to take that pretty seriously. I think a big part of that is just Scotty Barnes becoming a really, really good defender, and he's going to be, a big part of the Toronto Raptors defense moving forward. And I think that the scheme, as the Toronto Raptors get older, get a bit more respect from the referees and maybe cut down on the minutes from poor defenders, then maybe you could see the Raptors take a step forward defensively. Now the last category that we're going to be rating Darko on, which is development. And there have been some big steps forward and some pretty substantial steps back, but overall I would say it's positive here. So Scotty Barnes, I would say, has taken a step back on offense. He's not as good of a three-point shooter. Darko Rajakovic has, gone out and defended Scotty and said, I want him shooting more threes. And I'm not as big of a fan of him being in that role. Maybe it'll pay dividends down the road, but I have not seen the development there that hopefully you would have been able to see if you are getting the number of shots from three that he has attempted. It seems like it's kind of been all downside in terms of his shooting, but there is a huge development, which has been that Scotty Barnes has gotten much, much, much better on defense, and now he is one of the best defenders at the forward spot in the league. So that is a big thing. I think his ball handling still needs quite a bit of work, especially if he wants to get to the basket using his dribble. He needs to get better there. Grady Dick, his sophomore season started off fantastically. He had a huge start to the season. He was shooting the ball really well. That has seemed to have completely fallen off as the season has progressed. He's gotten fewer shot attempts. And I think as a result, he has just not been, as confident and has not been able to get into a groove. And he's, really tailed off toward the end of the season, and he's injured now. The real issue, I would say, is the defense. The defense from Grady Dick has been poor this season. He's poor at screen navigation. That's really the biggest issue. And another thing is that he's not a good finisher. He's been a very poor finisher around the rim. He needs to get better there, especially if he's going to be out in transition as much as he is. He gets the ball in transition, goes to the rim, and does not finish. He's okay at drawing fouls. That's probably the saving grace there, but he needs to get better at finishing. So I would say step forward, step back there, kind of in a holding pattern, honestly. I'm not exactly sure what I should expect from him moving forward. I kind of feel the same way as I did at the end of last season, where he had a horrendous start to the year and a really good end to the year. And this is kind of the opposite, really good start to the year, kind of pretty poor end to the year. So he needs to take some significant strides on the defensive end and on the offensive end to become a rotation caliber player. So still figuring out what we have here. Jacoby Walter, I think, has shown a lot of growth. I think that his ability to play defense at a high level and being tapped, being put into the role of an on-ball stopper has let him blossom, and he looks really good in that respect. His offense still needs work. He still needs to be able to make shots consistently. He still needs to have an in-between game where if he is run off of the line, he still needs to be able to handle the ball a little bit better and get to the rim. or create a pull-up shot or have some kind of move where he can score when he has the ball in his hands. So he needs to make developments there. But his role off of the ball, I think, has taken a step forward, and I think his defense has been great. So I would say good job there. In terms of the other rookies, so Jamal Shead, Jonathan Mobo, Jamison Battle, I would say they're all various shades of good. I would say, great job identifying these guys, great job putting them into a position to succeed. They've had their ups and downs, but I'm happy with how Darko has used them, and they look like they could be rotation players in the future. Even Orlando Robinson, I know that I've been giving him some guff, but he has looked good. And the guys who are on two-way contracts, they've come in, they've been put into a position to succeed, and they've done a pretty good job as well. Ochai Agbaji, I would say, has been a success story, especially compared to the relative expectations that we had for him moving into the season. He was kind of an afterthought, but he has done the 3-and-D wing thing pretty well. He has been put into a position to succeed there, and he's taken some strides. So good job there. I would say overall positive, but there are some question marks. Overall, in terms of grading Darko Rajakovic, this is a tough position to be in, and as a coach, you are rebuilding. The Toronto Raptors at this point are trying to lose games. It's not his decision to play a bunch of two-way players. Let me put it that way. But prior to that, when he had veterans and he was allowed to play a normal lineup and do all of that kind of stuff, I would say that it has looked decent given the personnel that the Raptors have. I think that maybe a better coach could have squeezed more wins out of this core. So I don't think that he has been, especially in a tactical rotation level, from an overall scheme-based thing, I think that there could be some improvements that he has to make from this season to the next one, no doubt about it. I think that he could be better there. In terms of development, in terms of the culture, in terms of that stuff, I think he gets high marks there. And overall, I would say that in terms of projecting forward, I do still have confidence in him as a coach. I don't think that they should fire him this offseason. I think that there's been calls for that on social media. I would overall give him a grade of C+. I don't think that he has been given the tools to consistently win games. I just don't think that that's the case. I think that there are some flaws in his offensive and defensive system, and I think around the edges, when you're starting to see how the team is forming, I think that he's doing a pretty good job. So mixed grades, and hopefully, he is able to raise his game next season along with all the other players on the team. Anyhow, the Toronto Raptors played last night, and it was kind of a tank battle, to put it lightly. The Sixers are horrible. The Toronto Raptors are playing, a lot of two-way guys, not many actual rotation players. So in the starting lineup, Jared Rhoden was definitely the standout this game. He played 43 minutes, so a ton of minutes. He had 25 points on 19 shots. He was 4 of 10 from 3, so 40% from 3, 3 of 4 from the line, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, 0 blocks, 3 turnovers. He looked good. They're playing against the Philadelphia 76ers, who are a bad team, very, very, very bad. So the level of competition is low. This is like a G League game where he has been, a good player for the Raptors 905. So it's no surprise that in a G League environment, he's going to be able to play a good game. And he did have a very good game, so good for him. Next up, we'll go to Jakob Poeltl. He only played 17 minutes, but while he was playing, it was just, he looked far better than the competition. His rotations were very crisp, and he was making the right play, etc. He had 9 points on 6 shots, 1 of 1 from the free throw line, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, unfortunately 4 turnovers. But I think, he's just too good to be playing in this game. He really shouldn't be playing in this game. Next up, we'll go to Colin Castleton. Colin Castleton's an interesting player. He played 40 minutes. He only had 7 points on 3 of 8 shooting, so not very efficient. He was 1 of 1 from the free throw line. He had 14 rebounds, 2 assists, 0 steals, 3 blocks, 2 turnovers, plus 14 on the game. So, he played a ton of minutes against a bad team, so that's not much of a surprise. I'm still trying to figure out what I think of this guy. He's definitely limited offensively, but he does play hard, and he plays pretty good defense. He can move his feet. Decent game from him. Jamison Battle struggled shooting the ball. He had 11 points on 15 shots. He was 3 of 12 from 3. He did have 8 rebounds, 1 assist, but also 3 turnovers. The turnovers were a huge problem this game, and I'll get to that once I mention my next player. But he really struggled shooting the ball. I think that he has been really good against the lower levels of competition, especially from the shooting perspective. He's, played off the bench for the most part. He started this game, wasn't able to get his shot down. He shot 25% from 3. This is an aberration. I think that he's going to be able to shoot the ball a lot better in most games. And now let's talk about Jamal Shead. So Jamal Shead had 5 points on 2 of 6 shooting. You'd be saying, well, this is a bad game. But here's the thing. He played 12 minutes this game, And this was definitely a tanking decision. He had 5 assists and only 1 turnover in 12 minutes. He is a good point guard. He can make plays for other people. And this was definitely a tank decision. They were playing without a point guard. They did not play a point guard for the majority of this game, which is why you see Pirtle having 4 turnovers, Jamison Battle having 3 turnovers, Colin Castleton, 2 turnovers, Jared Rhoden, 3 turnovers, Garrett Temple, 3 turnovers, AJ Lawson, 3 turnovers. Everybody, like, they had 20 turnovers this game. And they didn't play very many players. And should they have played Jamal Shed more this game? Absolutely. Were they trying to lose? Absolutely. That's why he didn't play. So, you know, hard to get better than 5 assists in 12 minutes from your point guard. Off of the bench, let's go to AJ Lawson. AJ Lawson had a fantastic game again, 28 points on 20 shots. He was 4 of 9 from 3. He was 4 of 6 from the free throw line, 6 rebounds, 4 assists this game, so that's encouraging. But yeah, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 3 turnovers. He's looked really good. When his shot is on, he looks like a good player, and he did look like a good player last night. Yeah, he can shoot, he can score. He does kind of have a penchant of getting blocked around the rim, but you know, he's trying to get inside and score. I don't know how much credit we should be giving the likes of Jared Rhoden, AJ Lawson, because, I mean, it is a good story and I like these guys, but they are playing against really bad teams. Utah was horrible. Sixers somehow are even worse. They are brutally bad. So credit to them, but also think about the level of competition. The next guy we're going to talk about, I'm seesawing back and forth on Orlando Robinson. He had a really good game, 25 points on 9 of 19 shooting. He was 2 of 3 from 3, big sign, 5 of 6 from the free throw line, 12 rebounds, 5 of them offensive, 6 assists, and only 1 turnover. So he had a very complete game. He was probably, in my opinion, the best player in this game. Maybe even, probably even better than AJ Lawson, probably better than Jared Rhoden, just because his defense was good too. Didn't turn the ball over at all, hardly. And then he hit 2 threes. I think his 3-point shooting is definitely, that's a strength. Maybe it was too hard. Like, I am just like, it's like in The Godfather Part 3, he goes, just when I thought it was out, they pull me back in. That's how I feel about Orlando Robinson. I think he had a good game, really good game. If he continues to do this, maybe I can forget about the week and a half or so of where he couldn't make a layup. So whipsawing back and forth on this guy. Garrett Temple played as well, kind of as a necessity. They had to play somebody off of the bench. 8 points on 3 of 7 shooting, 2 of 2 from 3, and also 8 assists in this game. So he was playing the, I guess, backup point guard role for the Toronto Raptors. Good job, Unc. You did it. You did a really good job. Anyway, the Toronto Raptors won this game. The 76ers are abysmal. They are absolutely terrible. They are not trying to win, but they also have a lot of really bad players on the team. Andre Drummond is beyond cooked. He didn't even play that much. Jeff Doughton had a good game, so congrats to him. Adam Bona had a pretty good game. And Quentin Grimes, again, had 29 points, albeit a little worse than some of his other games, but he did have a pretty good night. Everybody else is horrible. Everybody else had like really negative nights. And they can't play defense, they can't score, they can't shoot. It's a nightmare from a winning perspective. It's like a huge boon for them when it comes to keeping their pick, because they are right on the razor's edge right now. If they finish below, I believe it's 7th, they lose their pick. And they have just passed the Toronto Raptors in the tank standings. They are 22-43. The Raptors are 23-43. And looking at the schedule, looking how bad Philadelphia is, the Raptors are probably not going to be able to catch them, even if they play their two-way guys most of the rest of the season. Really kind of sad that this is kind of what the season is boiled down to. The Raptors are trying to lose games, and a bunch of teams are as well, because this draft is really good. And the Raptors were not able to successfully out-tank the Philadelphia 76ers last night. Oh well, and it's back at the tank. Tomorrow night, they play the Utah Jazz. At 9:30, they're going to be playing in Utah. If they continue to trot out these ridiculous lineups with 0 point guards and only two-way players and fringe rotation players, they might be able to lose to the Jazz, but who knows? It's going to be another tank battle, and I wouldn't blame you if you skip that game just because it's late at night and it's not going to be very competitive. Anyway, that is the episode. Let me know what you think of Darko Rajakovic. I know he's been getting a lot of criticism online, some of it deserved, some of it I don't think very deserved, especially from the rotations perspective. He's been getting roasted, like, why is he playing these guys? Guys, it's the front office, they're telling him to. There are some legit criticisms, try to find them for him. Maybe you can drop some legit criticisms here in the comment section, or on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. I love talking to Raptors fans, love hearing your comments. Love answering your questions. We are truly the best fan base in the NBA. And if you haven't already, please like the video and also subscribe. It helps the channel grow. It helps put this content in front of other Raptors fans such as yourself. And as always, thank you for tuning into Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.